Welcome to the Superstar Communicator podcast. My name is Susan Heaton-Wright, a leading impact, speaking and communications expert. My aim is to show you how to make an impact so you will be heard, listened to and respected for career success. Listen weekly to the podcast and go to our website, superstarcommunicator.com. Hello everybody, this is Susan Heaton-Wright from Superstar Communicator. I am really excited because I have on the other end of the internet Simon Childs of Optitude 360. Now, the reason why I was really keen to interview Simon was that I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago and Simon reached out to me talking about leadership traits and communication styles related to that. However, people, brace yourself. Simon is also an expert in recruitment for senior executives, and I believe that this would be a great interview given the fact that people are looking for jobs, they've lost jobs, and I knew that Simon would be able to bring value to this podcast and some great ideas for you if you're in this position. After graduating with a degree in psychology, Simon worked in human resources before jumping ship to join a global recruiter. 25 years on, you don't look that old. He is the managing director of Optitude 360 Executive Search Psychology. At Optitude 360, he uses a combination of some smart psychology and psychometrics to identify, select, and place senior and CXO level leadership talent with major organizations across UK and Europe. Simon tells me he's passionate about three things in life: headhunting, psychology, leadership, and that makes four, his wife and family. So what is behind your name, Optitude 360?
It's really, thanks. I should just say thank you very much for interviewing me today.
That's my pleasure.
And honestly, I feel privileged to be on your show.
Oh,
Optitude,
mine.
Yeah, Optitude 360 has been a concept that I've been thinking about for a very long time. So for the last 15, 16 or so years, as a headhunter, I've specialised in a particular discipline. It's something called attitudinal based selection. So lots and lots of companies will use sort of competency based interviewing, competency based selection based on the sort of skills and abilities that individuals have. For myself, I was not really keen on this approach from my days in HR, and I come across attitudinal based selection. And
yes,
so clearly, I followed this for the last 15 years. Coming back to Optitude, when I'm looking for senior level professionals for my clients, CXOs, HR directors, finance directors, whatever it might be, there are three things that are really key to me. The first thing that I always look for in people is attitude. I'm interested in people's attitudes rather than their pure competencies, because our attitudes have a much more these are the things that define us. They will come across in the way that we speak. They'll come across in the way that we treat others and the way that we work with others. So to me, the first principle for me is always the same. It's always about attitudes. With Optitude, there are three things. There's attitude, there's aptitude. So, in other words, it's all very well having the right attitude, but you need the right aptitude to be able to do the job. Particularly if you're a leader. The third thing that I look for is fortitude. So in terms of fortitude, what do I mean? I'm looking for people that have strength of mind and strength of character. In order to be a leader, you need to have followers. If you're the sort of person who has authority and you can order others about and get them to do your bidding, you're a manager. You're not a leader. leaders will inspire. They will get people to actually follow them because of who they are. People will do this willingly. You know, and I'm not saying leaders don't necessarily have to be all sweetness and light. You know, there are times when sometimes the whistle blows and it's right, guys, we've got to go over the top here. You know,
Yeah.
but these principles are key. So optitude. I thought about these 3 principles. So on my website, I have a Venn diagram with attitude, aptitude, and fortitude, and in the centre of that, I have optitude, which is the combination of the keys.
Very, very interesting. Now, presumably you use various tools in order to assess that. How does that work?
Okay. So the first thing that I tend to do is I tend to focus on attitudinal based selection techniques. So this is a broad subject, so I'm not going to go into this in any detail.
No.
But it is a range of questions that are aimed at candidates to really try and elicit their attitudes towards situations and the way that they've dealt with them, as opposed to purely looking at, you know, the competencies that they have. So, you know, well, rather than just, you know, what makes you a good leader, you know, we'll go a hell of a lot deeper. You know, we'll ask questions, I guess, in terms of what I do that are unorthodox. So when it comes to interviewing, I suppose interviewing is one of my specialities. This thing is very, very close to my heart. It's interesting, when I'm interviewing for my clients, I'm focused on attitudinal based selection. When I actually prep my candidates who are going for interview, I'll talk to them about competency based techniques, because these are quite often what my client uses. From a personal point of view, I need to be absolutely crystal clear that the person or the people, it's usually a short list of maybe somewhere between 3 and 5, that I'll be presenting back to my client. I need to be sure that this is going to be sufficient, and that my client's going to be happy with it, and the people are really going to deliver for me on the day. So yeah, I mean, hopefully I can add something to the conversation and give some people some tips about interviewing.
Oh yes, and there is a lot around unconscious bias. I mean, you possibly know that I did a neuroscience course last year, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about unconscious bias. How are you able to get over that?
Okay.
Personally.
Unconscious bias is a really, really interesting one. I believe that there are something like 137 different unconscious biases that we have as human beings, including, I'll just give you a funny one, the IKEA effect. Have you ever heard of the IKEA effect?
No, I'm intrigued.
So the IKEA effect is that when we go and buy, say, flat packed furniture from IKEA, we have a tendency to place more value on it because we've built it ourselves. So in other words, which is sorry, that's a bit of a funny one. Let me talk about something that is far more relevant when it comes to the workplace, and most specifically when it comes to interviewing. It's something called the halo and horns effect. Again, have you come across this?
No, I haven't.
It's really funny. Sometimes I talk to people about psychological principles, and when I explain some of this terminology, everyone's going to go. There'll be a lot of you out there that will be turning around saying, "Oh yeah, well everybody knows that. Everybody knows it." It's not the case.
No.
It's not the case until it either occurs to you before you've had your meeting, or you suddenly find the consequences of these sort of things afterwards. Okay, halo and horns effect. Simply by the nature of being human beings and our tendencies towards fight and flight, you know, we make decisions about the people that we meet within the first 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. We are going to make decisions about people. So, you know, when I'm interviewing, when I first meet someone in reception, so this has got to be my top tip number 1.
Yeah.
I'll walk out and I'll be, hello, I'm Simon Childs. How are you doing? Because I want to make people feel welcome.
Yes.
I want people to be comfortable. I want them, I don't want them to I don't want them to be. I don't want them to be guarded. So I'll try and put them at ease. It's really important to have to make a good first impression when you meet everyone at a company that you go to. I know that you're going to be nervous before you go for your first interview. So when prior to actually having an interview, you want to get to your interview early. I know this sounds so obvious, but you want to get to your interview 10 minutes early. Don't drink coffee before your interview. Don't drink coffee before your interview. It's going to make you way more tense. I've had candidates sitting in front of me being asked horrible attitudinal based questions, like really, you can see it in their faces that they're charged up on coffee and they're not thinking clearly about the things that they're saying. So, don't drink coffee. Arrive early. 10 minutes before your interview, switch your phone off. 10 minutes before your interview, switch your phone off. Find somewhere where you can just stand or sit, whatever you're going to do, and picture the outcome of that interview. I want you to think about, even though, you might not know the person that you're going to meet. These are the sort of things that set us on edge. So sometimes if you sort of think about, even though I don't know this person, this person's like a friend of my brother, my sister, my mum, my dad, whoever it might be. So it's almost like you feel there's some sort of connection, even though you don't know them personally, they're connected to someone else. In fairness, a really good one to think about this would be they're potentially going to be connected to you on LinkedIn somewhere.
Yeah. I was going to ask that.
Absolutely. So again, this is prior to the interview. You want to take this 10 minutes and you want to think about great outcomes. All right. Don't chop over the things that don't think about too hard about the what you're going to say and all of this sort of thing, because it will. You'll fall foul of these sort of things in an interview.
Yes.
You should have prepared before.
Yes.
So, and obviously, prior to the interview, preparation will win the day. You need to prepare. You need to get online. You need to understand who's interviewing you. You want to try and find out what motivates them. You want to try and find out if they've got any hot buttons. You want to understand the company really well. So if someone turns around and says to you, well, okay, so what do you know about us?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be stumped right off the bat. All right. So that, again, I feel that, that sort of thing is a top tip in itself. Coming back to the original thing about, I was talking about halo and horns. Sorry, I've digressed off.
Yeah.
Back to the original point. When you meet anyone in that company, you need to make sure that you treat everybody with respect. I've worked with companies.
Oh God, yes.
Candidates have walked into reception. They've met our receptionist, and some of these guys, very senior guys, they've treated them with disrespect in some cases. Yeah. And I asked the receptionist, what did you think? Do you seem like an all right guy? And, don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of people are very, very professional, but there have been cases where it's been quite the opposite, So treat everybody with respect. When you come in, and this one is going to sound obvious, but you want to give a really good firm handshake and you want to look your interviewer in the eye and introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Simon Childs. I'm looking forward to speaking to you today. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Interviews are really, really tense situations. I like to talk about real things that have really happened. So I'm going to try and share another top tip with you, and this one might sound suspect. It might sound, I don't know about that, but I was on a tube some years ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was a young lady sitting in front of me on the Northern Line, and she was reading a book that I consider to be the worst book in the world. Great answers to tough interview questions.
All right.
And it was hilarious. So I'm on the tube, and I got this young lady's attention. I said, "Oh, excuse me." I said, "I'm sorry to interrupt you." I said, "But are you going on an interview?" And she said to me, "Yeah, how do you know?" And I said, "You've just communicated to all of the people in this carriage that you're going on an interview with this book that says in big bold letters, 'Great answers to tough interview questions.'" And I said to her, "Look, how many of those great answers do you think you're going to be able to remember when you get under the pressure of interview?" She sort of said, "Well, I'm not sure." So I said, "Right, okay. I have another question for you. What are you going to do if you've learned an absolute ton of questions, you've learned the answers, you've got these things off pat, and then they don't come up? Then what are you going to do? You know?" And she said, "Well, I don't know." And she said, "What do you suggest?" So what I would suggest you do is you think back to past experiences that you've had. Now, when you go for competency-based interviews, I'm not going to go through everything, but I'll give you a few. Companies are always going to want to know the same things about you. And obviously, the things that they will want to know will depend on the level of role that you're going for. So, for example, they'll always, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, they are always going to want to understand how you've managed others and how you work with others. All right. So, what you want to think about is think about some times when you have, you've proved your leadership skills. You've really, something's happened and, you've stepped up and you've really, really come through. Okay. These things are key. Another one would be, okay, one of the key questions that I'm asked is about strengths and weaknesses. When you're asked the horrid question like, talk me through your strengths. Now, my advice to you would be to think about your key strengths. What is it that makes you really, really good at doing what you do? You need to have these things down off pat.
Yes.
I would say pick 3 things and be ready to talk about them. And so you sort of say something like, "Well, look, I'm focused, and here's why."
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
I'm motivated.
And I'm demonstrating why, yeah.
You give a brief explanation. One classic tip that I have is rehearse your interview answers. Now, I'm not saying for a minute that you go down this road of great answers to tough interview questions, because you don't know what you're going to be asked. But if you practice going over some sort of competency-based questions whilst looking in the mirror,
yes,
you'll see your facial expressions as you're speaking. So here, right, okay then, guys, when I'm interviewing people, I'm digressing slightly, but when I'm interviewing people, it's not just about the questions that I'm asking them. I'm looking at their facial expressions. I'm listening to their verbal patterns.
Yeah.
Looking at their body language. So these are some things that you need to be aware of. I don't want, I don't want you to go away and be so concerned about these sort of things that they become everything. But what I would like you to do is I'd like you to look in the mirror and I'd like you to practice answering some questions. What you don't want to be doing in interviews of things like this, you don't want to be sort of talking like this.
Yeah.
Over your face, or you're sort of going on, Keep your hands in your lap when you're sitting in an interview. Okay, smile. I've sat in interview. A couple of things. Smile when you're smiling, and you're talking. You can't help but pull your vocal cords, and as you can see, suddenly my voice has changed.
Yeah, it's actually the technically, everybody, it's not your vocal cords down there. It's actually your soft palate.
There you go. Soft palate.
The soft palate raises slightly, and you have a more interesting voice to be.
Fantastic. So these are these are some real keys
Oh, yes.
when it comes to interviewing. I think just a few more. I mean, when it comes to answering, what's the? Let me ask you, Susan. What's the worst question that you've been asked at interview?
Goodness me, there are so many, but I do remember on one occasion when I was applying for university, and the dean said to me, well, on your reference it says that you lack confidence. Why on earth are you applying to this university? I was 17 years old, and I just said, I would really love to come to this university, and that's why I applied.
Okay. No.
But I was, and then afterwards I left thinking, I've blown it. But I got in.
Yeah. So was it an actual reference, like a separate third-party reference?
Oh, my headmistress had obviously said Susan lacks confidence, and probably said, I have no idea why. But he picked the, I don't know. And it was quite right. I did lack confidence.
Okay. I think the point that you make is a really, really interesting one, and I think you need to be a really, really good consumer of the things that people say about you, in terms of filtering out things that are nonsense. One person's opinion doesn't define you.
Yeah. And at 17, I had not been given interview experience, and this was a different era.
Oh, of course it was. And the interesting thing is the amount of people that I've met over a long period of time who have been affected by this issue. Sometimes I often talk about traits of leadership, okay, and some of the best leaders, some of the very, very best people that I meet, they are very mindful of the way that they treat their peers and the guys that are working for them.
Yes.
I remember a guy, cracking guy. He was, I think he's moved on now. He used to be like a program director over at Prudential. He said to me that he's really mindful that picking the right place and time to give feedback is really, really important.
Definitely.
He said, if you go and you sort of ball someone out in public, or you humiliate someone, or you make someone feel small, even, but it doesn't matter whether it's in public, it doesn't matter whether it's in private, you don't know the effects of your words. You don't know what is there. There is a butterfly effect, that happens when we have these conversations with people. There is a butterfly effect. So he said to me, you don't know whether someone's going to go home, kick the dog, I don't know, have a row with the wife, stack the car, whatever it might be, because of that conversation.
Yes.
So, if one of the things that I see in some of the best leaders that I meet, they're mindful of these sort of things. And that doesn't mean to say that from time to time they don't give tough feedback, but they've built a relationship, or they will have created an environment where people know what to expect of them.
Yes.
So, sorry, that's a separate issue. Right now, for you guys out there, obviously the interviewing is really, really important. Answering difficult questions, like this one, someone says, well, actually, your references say otherwise. I think that in this very, very legislative day and age, it's rare that people give full references,
Yeah.
So, if someone said, well, do you know what? I'm really surprised. But, I think it's only fair to say that this is one person's opinion, if something like that come up.
Oh, that's a really, really good point.
And, I think, look, one of the worst ones that people tell me is, okay, so look, we've talked about your strengths. So, what would you consider to be your greatest weakness? I'm going to ask Susan. Susan, we all have strengths and weaknesses. In fact, I don't like talking about, weaknesses. I generally talk about areas of development. But if you had an area of development, what would that be?
Do you know, it would be within my leadership capabilities that I trust people a little bit more to get on with their work without going into a micromanagement role.
Okay. Can you see the little gun that I'm holding up here?
Yes.
The gun is cocking as we speak. I'm joking. I'm sorry. I'm joking. I'm being very facetious. sorry. Look, it's a really good point, but let me. I'm going to jump in here because I know we've got some sort of limited time, but this is such a crucial point.
Yes.
When you are asked a difficult question like this, there is a tendency, because you're a good, honest-natured individual, and we all have strengths, we all have areas of development.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely do. So, no one can expect you to be perfect. And
yeah.
My only advice to you is, if you're asked this question, I want you to think very, very carefully about the answers that you give to it. And why do I say that? You never know what cognitive filter. So what do I mean by this? When I say cognitive filter, I'm talking about the interviewer that you're talking to that's sitting there. I'm talking about the way that they're going to process.
Yes.
That you're using. You don't know, so you can't know what they're thinking.
No.
So Susan, just mentioned to me, oh well, okay, in the past, you're gonna have to run it past me again. Sorry, I'm sort of so. You mentioned the word micromanagement, so that I don't.
Absolutely. So in a leadership role, because we were talking about leaders, I recognize that there's been a tendency for me to want to micromanage a little bit too much and going into a management role rather than being a leader.
Right, I take your point. The moment that you disclose that information, you can't take that back.
Right.
And here's my point, because what you've just made, and you've given a perfect example, and forgive me, that's very rude of me. I'm joking about the cocking of the gun, but it can be that quick, and that's why I've made the point. You don't know what someone else's experience of this has been. So
right, okay.
So
it might trigger something in there. Yeah.
What can happen is micromanagement. Suddenly, like a whole, explosion of internal thought is going off in the back of someone's mind. Oh well, they had a tendency towards it once. Well, are they going to do that again? If we put them under enough pressure.
Yeah.
It's the way. Will they revert to that? Now, what I'd like, people ask me, how do we answer the question? Let me give you a technique. Be prepared with an answer, and what I would say is think about some innocuous areas of development that you have that aren't related to the job that you're applying for.
Right, okay.
So let me give you an example. In the past, on occasion, I've not been fond of admin. However, over a period of time, I've come to realise that it's really, really important that I dot the I's and cross the T's, because otherwise I can slow down my whole team. So
that's an excellent one. Yes.
So, in fairness, I don't feel like I've reached absolute perfection, but I do feel like I've made significant improvement.
So listeners, you're all going to use that one now, aren't you?
It is, it's not necessarily about the way that you put it. You can put it any way you want. It's simply that, the key here is to memorize some, have some things in your bag, have some answers in your bag that are general, that could be, I don't want you to think about specific answers to questions. Think about more the bigger general picture that you're going to find at companies. So things like, okay, think about times you've had to deal with difficult people. And, when you're answering questions, I'm going to give away some of my secrets here. When you're answering questions, I often tell people, that I use a technique that I call SIR, S-I-R. This was the situation. This is an acronym, so It stands for this is the situation, this is what I implemented, and this is the result. And if you think around that acronym when you're answering interview questions, I think that that will take you a long way, and it will, you know, it will give the interviewer a really good basis of, you know, where you're coming from. So think about scenarios that you've been in. Think about the times you've had to work with difficult people, manage difficult people. Think about times when you've had to turn things that have been failing around. How have you done it? And, you know, think about these things as stories. That's that, you know, if I was going to give a top tip, that's the sort of thing that I do. Forget the trying to learn great answers and forget trying to memorize things, because unless you are extremely practiced at this sort of thing, it will come across as if you're being untruthful. Your body language will give you away.
There'll be some leakages.
So, you know, like I said, people don't have to be experts at body language, but they will interpret.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, we are all experts at body language.
We are.
Now, before we go, I think one of the really key issues at the moment for interviews is that they're being conducted virtually. Do you have any tips about that?
Oh dear, I don't want to get shot by all of the people that all of my clients, but yeah.
Sure. No, sorry. Sorry to put you on the spot, but it is an ongoing issue, isn't it?
Okay. The first thing that I'm going to say, some of these things are going to be very general, but they should be obvious, but again, you can't take anything for granted. If you're, obviously people have been locked down. There are still people on furlough and what have you, with lots of people in the house.
Yes.
Make it clear to everybody that you are going for an interview.
Yes.
Put a sign on the door, put a lock on the door, but somehow you need to communicate to people that I'm having an interview at this time, and it would be, you know, really bad if I was interrupted, or very, it would not be good. So that would be number one. I think number two is to ensure that you are somewhere where you've got a great connection.
Yes.
I've done podcasts before and live interviews where everything's going really well, and then either my or someone else's internet can become shaky. So you need to be really sure that you've got a great connection. When it comes to video interviews, there are some things that can be really quite helpful, if I'm honest. You could, you know, I'm not saying this is necessarily the right thing to do, but you could have papers spread around you, you know, with, you know, just to sort of prompt your memory. Just to say, look, when you go to interview, you always need to have a copy of your CV in your lap, because people will ask you about dates on your CV. Okay, so always have a copy of your CV.
That's a really good point.
And also, if you are going for more senior level jobs, you would have what I would call an executive briefing. So you'll have a document that, you know, that talks about some of the. It's almost like an aid memoir that you can have sitting there with your CV, that's saying, you know, well, okay, then these are some of the key objectives that I've reached. This is the money that I've made. This is the amount that I've saved the company, made the company. This is the percentage to which I've changed. Yes. There's something I'd like to finish up on. But,
yes, of course.
And well, actually, I'm just going to say finish up on, but there's something that I think is really, really key. All right. How can I put this? How can I put this in the right way? Quite often, you know, when we're applying for jobs and also when we're going for interviews, this might sound a little bit mean and a little bit harsh.
No. You have to say it as it is.
Nobody cares initially what a nice person you are. The first thing that people are going to want to know is, can this person deliver what I need delivering? Now, don't get me wrong, because when you go for interview, they will be assessing what sort of guy is this. Do you know what? I make a joke I've made a joke in the past that the first question, I've asked people, you know, what's the first question that anybody asks when they meet someone else? Or, you know, when I meet people, you know, the first question I'm generally asking, particularly if they're going to work with me, is, if I take this person on, how much of a pain are they going to be when they get there? You know?
Yeah.
Now, this is always unspoken. This sort
Yeah.
of thing comes back to that halo and horns. You know, again, with the halo and horns, we make decisions within 30 seconds. And I probably should have elaborated on this, but if we like someone, then we will look for references that back up the fact that we like them. If we don't like them, we will look for references that, you know, that again
justify our decision,
justify our feelings. Now, halo and horns is really, really difficult to overcome. You know, it's human nature. There have been, in the last 25 years, I can remember 2 occasions where I've had interviews, and initially, my initial thoughts when I've met someone have been, forget it. Oh, you know, no way. And they've turned me round. And, you know, they've been so significant that people have suddenly turned out to be so amazing that, you know, it really is off the scale. But in the main, you know, people are going to be using their gut feelings when they're interviewing you. So you want to come across as being professional. You want to come across as being friendly. You want to come across as being likable, and most of all, you want to come across as being yourself. Because when the curtain, well, what I say to people again at interview is, look, when the curtain goes up, you're only going to get one shot at this. So rehearse your general answers, you know, like mad. And when you actually get to the interview, you know, be prepared to be remembered. You want to be memorable, but you also want to be brief. You don't want to be giving answers that just ramble on and on and on. You want to go in there, you want to be memorable, you want to be brief, okay? And at the end, oh, actually, this is key. At the end of an interview, you need to be prepared to ask questions. And I think if you're on a first interview, you just want to ask general questions.
Yes.
You know, how long have you been with the company? What's the culture like here?
Yeah. Yes.
You know, how many departments does this department interact with? You know, it can be anything, but you do need to ask questions. Send a thank you note after you've after you've been interviewed. Again, I think these things will make a difference. I've tried to pack in a few, you know, as many tips as
and it's just been gold dust. Thank you so much. You know, we could go on ad infinitum, and I know how busy you are, and I'm so grateful for your input. If people want to get in contact with you and to find out more about what you do, how can they contact you?
Drop me a line on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Optitude, we are, you know, we're still very new. I literally started Optitude right in April, right as COVID kicked in. So my website should be out of development this week. So if that will be posted, hopefully, I don't know, I'm going to say by Monday on my LinkedIn page. I operate 2 companies. I operate Optitude 360, which is all about helping companies to find senior executives and senior professionals and interims. The second company that I run is called Optitude OCC, or Optitude Outplacement and Career Counselling, or, you know, career coaching. So I offer individual career coaching as a service. I help people write CVs. I help them get through tough interviews. You know, if you'd like to know more, then please contact me via LinkedIn, and you know, let's have a chat. I incidentally offer a free half an hour of advice on these sort of matters.
Oh, that would be brilliant for people. I know that there will be 1 or 2 people that are listening to this who would be very interested in that service. So please remember to link with Simon on LinkedIn, and integrate with him, interact with him, because if you need this help, it's quite obvious that Simon is the person to talk to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Simon. I am so, so grateful. Listeners, please get in contact with Simon if you need help, because I know that life is going to be quite challenging for a number of people, and I know that you are all excellent potential candidates if you're looking for a job. So thank you very much for listening. Until next time, this is Susan from Superstar Communicator. You have been listening to the Superstar Communicator podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and review the podcast on iTunes and on apps. Please contact us if you want to discuss any topic, could suggest a topic for us to include, or a guest who could come onto the podcast. Go to superstarcommunicator.com.